I found myself in that situation where I was treating the horse photographs differently to I was the other stuff I was doing. Then I suddenly realised that I shouldn't do that. I treat it in exactly the same way. I frame it in the same way. I give things space. I process it the same way. Suddenly I did that and it all dropped into place, and hopefully it became a thread. You can look at a long exposure picture of mine or something a bit more abstract, and you look at a horse picture and they all sort of run. It sort of follows through.
Welcome to the Viewfinders Photography Podcast. You just heard Jonathan Chritchley, one of the world's foremost fine art photographers, talking about developing his distinct and timeless style. Much more to come from Jonathan in just a wee minute. In the meantime, I'm Graham Dargy, a professional photographer based in Aberdeen, Scotland, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so as we delve into the thoughts of one of the best photographers in the world. How's your week been? I feel like I'm in a bit of a time warp because when this episode comes out, I'll be on holiday. So I'm recording this intro a couple of weeks before the episode comes out. So I can't exactly tell you what I've been up to this week, but a couple of weeks ago, I was really busy just trying to get ahead of things before the holiday. Still working on this live event for autumn, which I'm so excited for. Just a couple of details to finalise. So you'll be hearing about that in the ad slots soon, and I'll fill you in on the holiday and a couple of bits of work that I've got going on when I get back to the future, if you know what I mean. Anyway, if you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe or follow Viewfinders on your favourite platform, and if you really love this show, drop me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also find me on Instagram at Viewfinders Podcast and drop me a message to let me know if you have any feedback or suggestion for future guests. Okay, without further ado, my guest this week is fine art photographer Jonathan Chritchley. Jonathan's work is instantly recognisable and can be found in exhibitions, galleries, magazines, books, and fine art collections around the world. His regular clients include Ralph Lauren, Ritz, Carlton, and Vogue magazine. Jonathan also speaks and presents his work at photography and sailing events worldwide, and he's the founder and owner of Capture Earth and Ocean Capture, two companies specialising in luxury photography workshops and tours. Jonathan was named one of the top 100 photographers of all time by both the UK's Sunday Times newspaper and Professional Photographer magazine. His first book, Silver, was published in 2014, and in 2016 he was made a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. Our conversation covers the pivotal moments in Jonathan's life that led him to his signature style, how he creates his timeless images of horses, sailing boats and icebergs, the importance and value of staying on brand, and of course the stories behind some of his most beautiful images. This conversation came at just the right time for me, and I picked up a few things from Jonathan that have made a real difference in my own photography journey. I'm sure you'll have a few takeaways as well from a truly unique photographer whose timeless style and glass half full attitude is as refreshing as the ocean breeze he captures with his camera. Here's my conversation with Jonathan Chritchley. Jonathan Chritchley, welcome to the Viewfinders podcast. How are you?
Hi Graham, thanks very much for having me. Yes, I'm very well, thanks. How about you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. Just talking about the weather before we came on, and it's misty here, solid mist. You were saying that it's kind of good conditions where you are. So where are you based?
I'm based on the Mediterranean coast of France, on the Côte d'Azur, just across the bay, within the Bay of Saint-Tropez. So we've not been here that long. We lived in France I lived in France for about 20 years, but we lived on the other side, on the other coast, on the Atlantic coast for many years. And then during COVID, we just sort of decided it was time for a change. And it's long been a goal to come over this side. I tend to work a lot over this side with the sailing boats and horses and other things I do. So it was a sort of natural progression, and it just happened to coincide with the time when my kids had to change school because they're going up sort of different levels. So it just worked out really well, and we popped our house on the market over there and found somewhere over here, and then it all happened. So the weather is one thing, as I said to you before, you don't worry about, but mist is beautiful, and one of my favourite conditions to work in. So I'm actually very jealous of you right now.
Good, okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Our part of town, right? Our town is not misty, but our part of town is known to be misty all the time. So okay. Maybe one day we can house swap,
sure,
and we'll see how the other half live.
Okay, let's do
that. Really appreciate your time today. I discovered your photography, several years ago, And I just remember seeing this image of, white horses crashing through water. And it was such a striking, sort of powerful image. And so I would have followed through to your website and saw your sailing photography, which is it's a different thing, kind of a different style of thing, but has your style, your fingerprints all over it for sure.
Thank you.
The sense of motion and adventure, and you can almost feel the wind blowing there in those pictures. So yeah, preparing for this conversation, I found out a couple of other things about you that I'm really keen to pick up on. So really excited to get going. But I'm always keen to ask people where they started, how they grew up, how they got into photography. So you're in the south of France now, but you didn't start out there.
That's correct. No, I grew up in Surrey, just outside London, born in Wimbledon, and sort of lived in that area for, until my early teens, really. And then sadly, my father died when I was 13, and my mother relocated us to the south coast, a little village on the south coast of England called Lymington, which is well known for sailing. It's a small village, but a small town, but very lovely. And that's really, I'd always been a big fan of the sea. I hadn't really had much to do with cameras, although I did have one of my father's old cameras, which had no film in it. I just used to sort of hold it up in front of my face and sort of frame things. So I got quite used to seeing life that way. I think it became a little bit of an escape, And moving down to the coast and sort of having just suffered that, trauma, if you like, I used to go on my own down to the sea a lot and just sit there and sort of seek a little consolation, I suppose, and with the sea. So it became a friend. It became somewhere to go. And a little while later, I moved to a bigger town, moved to Bournemouth in Dorset, a little further along the coast, as a sort of young chap, and had a friend who was a photographer. So he then took me to the next stage and taught me all about, as it was then, darkroom and processing film and everything, and couldn't afford colour film, so I got stuck into black and white and absolutely fell in love with it, and has been that way ever since, really. So my work really tends to be 99% black and white these days too. So it really went that route, very organic. Then tried to make a bit of a go of photography when I was in my early 20s, but had obviously no business sense or no idea on how to make it work. I could take a picture or two. And so to cut a very long and boring story short, I went to I got a job working for a surfing company, board sports, that sort of thing, doing marketing and sales for them. And then that led me down to France, and then also gave me some weapons to this time run my own business. So after a few years with them, I left and started up my own thing, but this time obviously had a bit more knowledge and was able to make a go of it, fortunately. So that's in a nutshell, that's okay. That's how I got to where I am.
Okay. And when you moved to the coast, so you started to have this relationship with the sea, I guess, if I'm picking that up right. Was it just easier for your mum to be there for some reason? Were there family around, or?
You mean the reason we moved down to Lymington? No, I think it was just a change, I think it was just a change of scenery, and I have 3 older sisters who were already married and had that had their own families. So I think it was just a way to change things up a bit. And I was asked a question, of course, whether I would mind or whether I wanted to, and I very much did. I think life at that point became sort of almost like a film, a movie, and I was living this kind of part in which my father had died, and that's how I sort of got through things. So when it was asked whether it would be okay to move down to the coast, it became part of that script, that movie, and it sounded wonderful, as a sort of young chap to be doing that. So it just filled those gaps. It filled something. It gave me a sort of a reason to. The sea very much became a reason to get up in the mornings in many ways. So it was very exciting and took my mind off all the other stuff that was going on.
Yeah. Surely there's something about being just on the beach at the coast. I don't know, the sound and the rhythm of the waves is so calming. I mean, maybe that's something that you found as well. But is that when you got into sailing, or?
Well, sailing sort of came then, because Lymington, as I said, is a very well-known sailing town, and a lot of the sort of the British Olympian sailors are either from there or go and train there and live there or whatever. So it's very much part of the heritage of the town. And yes, I did learn to sail there, and although I preferred being in the water rather than on it, and still do actually, my favourite way of being in the sea is just being in the sea and just being, with a pair of shorts on and just swimming around, or a wetsuit or whatever. So yes, I learned to sail, but also fell in love with boats at that time. But ones so I could look at the sailing boats, ones that are a bit faster. And at that time, I also I became a lifeguard for a bit on boats, and that sort of taught me all about boats and how they worked. And so that, with a bit of sailing and a bit of lifeguard training, I felt quite equipped to be with or on or next to the sea. But sailing, yes, it's something I haven't done for ages. I mean, it's ridiculous because I take so many photographs of sailing boats, but I'm never sailing when I do it. Clearly, I'm always on something else, either another boat that's a bit faster or a helicopter sometimes.
And then surfing as well, and then so that's when you got into marketing, right? So I was interested to just dig into your marketing career a little bit. And so you worked for another company, and then you set up yourself. I think you said that. So
I worked for a company, this surfing, the board sports company. It wasn't just surfing; they did snowboard stuff as well. But I'm not really interested in snow too much. But it was my sort of thing was this, obviously the sea, and I would never say that I was a surfer. I'm not really. But again, I sort of found a little niche for myself. I found I was quite good at those things, selling things and marketing things, having upcoming ideas of ways to develop things. And I learned a lot from the people that worked there who were very experienced. So when we moved to France, I was basically put in charge of building the business in France for this company. And so from scratch, hiring staff, dealing with magazines, the early websites and things, that was all sort of my job. And what I didn't know, I learned, and what I didn't learn, I just made up and just sort of busked my way through it. And we did okay, did all right at it actually. But what it did do, as I said earlier, was gave me a really good grounding in that sort of thing. When I got bored of it, it became a bit political. The company grew very fast, and although everyone was wearing shorts and t-shirts, it became a bit like a sort of 9-to-5 business job, which I didn't really want at the time. I was still only quite young, so I looked for ways to get back into photography, and this time realised that actually I can do it. I had the confidence in the business side of things to actually make it work.
So the photography was going on the side as a hobby at the time then? Yeah,
it sort of started to. I hadn't picked up a camera for a while, but it was just too busy with the other things. And then suddenly I sort of saw it sitting there and thought, no, it's time to get back into that again. And I did, and then started really enjoying it. And then, actually my wife, we found out my wife was pregnant with my kids, we have twins. And when we got that news, I decided I didn't want them to have a father that worked for someone else. I wanted to be my own boss. It was just it's nothing against people that do, of course. It was just a personal decision, and I was feeling a little bit oppressed at work. So I thought, well, this is one way to get around it. So we had a good chat and stayed up all night talking about it. Next morning, I gave him my notice and started up my business, and took out a bank loan and to get myself started, and bought some equipment and gave myself a bit of money to live for a while. And of course, the fact that my wife was every day showing signs of having twins it was the kick up the backside that I needed to get on with it. I couldn't hang around and just see what happened. I needed to just move it. So it was actually really good timing, I think.
So what did your photography look like at that time? This would be going to be 16, 17 years ago, I guess.
Yeah. Correct.
So you've got your passion for photography, your relationship with the sea. They came together, would you say?
Yeah, they did. When I was younger, I also had quite a passion for drawing and charcoal, and I've always liked that sort of very simple lines of things. It's something I've always been very drawn to. So, even back then, photography, there's still pictures that were taken back then on my website now. I started it was always black and white, and I started playing with obviously long exposures, initially through just being up early or out late, and then buying filters. But it was, of course, at that time, it wasn't a common thing. Nowadays, it's quite common to do lots of long exposures, black and white, and things standing in milk. It's quite a sort of a common thing these days. It's fantastic, but back then it wasn't really. So I was experimenting, trying things out, and I suppose my work looked like it does now. I wanted space. I'm a very claustrophobic person. I like open spaces, and I think that comes across in my work, that I don't like things to be squeezed. I like to have open spaces or leave gaps in things, so the eye can work its way around. And in those times, in that first year, of working on my own without having the confines of another job. I was out every day just trying different things out, going down to the beach, going to lakes, just trying really all different things, and it was very interesting. I realised that it was going to be tough, but I sort of very quickly found a brand that as soon as I found myself having a brand, I found it very easy to work with because I was used to that. So I found that was the best way, was to treat myself like a brand, do something that you love, that's recognisable, that people understand your brand, and then away you go. But just stick to what you love. And that's really what I've done ever since, to be honest with you. Those things, I wrote those things on a piece of paper on my office wall, stuck it on my office wall those years ago, and I've still stuck to that, really. Mm-hmm. Do things you love doing, and make it simple for people to understand what you do. And that way, I wanted to become the go-to person that did certain things, And I think that's pretty much what happened over the years.
Yeah, that is totally fantastic advice. And yeah, I can see it's so interesting for me talking to people, because you can just getting a bit of the backstory makes the photography make sense, Yeah. All those bits and pieces of your backstory just coming together into the work. It's really interesting, and it just makes sense. So, so was it always workshops when you started? Was that always the way that it was going to be, or were you focusing on creating fine art?
Well, both. I mean, what I decided was, another thing that was on my list of things on the wall was, this whole be true to what you love. So I made up my mind that I wasn't going to do any sort of photography that I didn't enjoy doing just for the money. It was I had enough of sort of working for other people, and I'm quite a sort of stubborn individual, and I didn't like to be told what to do. So I thought, no, whatever I do, it's going to be entirely for me. So I'm not going to do weddings or do anything else that I don't enjoy. And again, absolutely nothing against those photographers, because it's an incredible job and must be very stressful. But I thought, no, I'm going to stick to what I do. And one of the ways to do that was to offer workshops, basically, was to basically provide income for someone who was just starting out. I thought it would be unable to stay true. So basically, I'm teaching what I'm doing, if you like, even though it was early days. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did. So my company, Ocean Capture, was formed, well, literally overnight. I woke up at 3 a.m. with an idea for this brand, and instantly put it into a search engine to see if there was another company called that, and luckily there wasn't. So I bought the URL straight away, and started running workshops. A few people said it would have been a good idea. I was already getting a little bit of a following, even at that time, which was very flattering. And because I lived where I did, in a nice part of the world, people thought, well, it's not rocket science to actually start doing that. So I went on a workshop or two just to see how they would run and to see what that provided, and thought it was interesting. I thought I could do it. And so I started running workshops. I think it was the summer of 2007 was the first workshop I ran. And then Ocean Capture, of course, over the years has developed organically into being something completely different, something much bigger than I ever anticipated it being. But back then it was just me and sort of 3 or 4 people drifting along the coast in southwest France and sort of having fun.
I wanted to ask you about your horse photography. I think I'm going to say this wrong, but it's in Camargue. Is that the area? Well,
that's one of the areas. That's certainly where it started, Graham. It was the Camargue is also on the Mediterranean, France, but closer to Marseille, just past Marseille. It's the delta of the Rhone River, so it's a very flat area, full of mosquitoes, and it's actually very beautiful. I'll make it sound horrible. It's a very beautiful area. It's got its own identity. It's a really beautiful place, but it has these white horses that have been there for over 1,000 years. No one really knows how they got there. They're not wild. They're actually owned, but they live in the wild, so they very much live, out in the open. I started photographing them purely because I'd a conversation I'd had with my parents when I was a little chap on the beach in the south of the UK, where it was a rough day in the winter. I think we must have gone down there for a Sunday or something for a walk, and it was a rough day, and the waves were sort of rolling in, and of course you get that white foam on top of the waves. And I asked, at 7 years old, what's that? And I think my father said, well, explain what it was. He said, but another name for it is white horses. And I thought, wow, that's fun. And so as a little chap, I was imagining these these white horses running in from the sea. I thought that sounds very, romantic and emotive. And of course, I guess that got stored away, like so many of these things too, got stored away in my head until I think it was back in 2008 or 9. I'd been going for a couple of years, and I was looking to push myself. I was doing a lot of long exposures and pictures of waves, and I thought, well, it's got to be more about that. I don't want to just be doing this. I want to sort of try and find a signature across different things, but try and push myself to be out of my comfort zone and do things that are a bit different. And I happened to see a photograph of it was a dreadful postcard picture with bright pink sunshine and, all the soft light. It was really sort of oversaturated, but it was these horses running in the water. And I noticed that it was, in the Camargue, and literally the next day I drove over there and started looking around, saw the horses, met some people, and then started shooting the horses there on my own. And had no idea how to do it. I'd never shot a horse before in my life, never worked with animals. I'd been on a horse a couple of times, but didn't really know that much about them. But fortunately, my wife grew up with horses, so she was able to sort of tell me what looked good and what didn't in terms of horse body language and what to look for and what to avoid. And I found myself in that situation where I was treating the horse photographs differently to I was my own the other stuff I was doing, like the long exposures or the waves. Then I suddenly realised that I shouldn't do that. I treat it in exactly the same way. I frame it in the same way. I give things space. I process it the same way. And then suddenly, as I was learning, suddenly I did that, and it all dropped into place. And hopefully, it became a thread. You can look at a long exposure picture of mine or something a bit more abstract, and you look at a horse picture, and they all sort of run. It sort of follows through. Yeah. But it took a while to get to that point. So the Camargue, yes, we started running workshops there about a year later, I suppose, and it's been one of my most popular. We still go there twice a year to run trips there, and it's always a very gratifying experience. And experience is the right word. It's a fantastic place to be.
So yeah, you've answered like a few of the questions I had about that topic. Actually,
I've been waffling on.
It's good. It's good. No, it's good.
Okay.
I was going to ask you how what you learned in marketing transfers into your photography, but it's so clear about you staying on brand. And the sort of clarity that you have for what your brand is and how your photographs should look, but the strength and advantage that's giving you is so clear, So just practically, I was wondering, so the horses, I thought they were wild horses, but you're saying they're living wild. But I was just wondering practically how you control that situation. How do you get yourself in a position photographically, to shoot them successfully? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Well, normally I camp out for 3 or 4 weeks, in the mosquito-ridden wastes of the Cabona. That's an absolute lie. I don't do that at all. I stay in a 4-star hotel, and people come and move the horses for me. That's how it works. Okay. It's by no means a hardship, and it's a production. It's a bit like if you were shooting a movie. So the horses are some of them we just move on foot, because some of them I want to shoot them close to where they live, if you like. And sometimes it's a bit more complex. If you want to go to sort of Mediterranean beach or something, we have to go early in the morning, and then we have to bring horses there in horse boxes. And the horses love it, by the way. They have a great time. It's a bit like if you've ever taken a dog for a walk on the beach, and you see that sort of release of energy. It's very much the same with the horses. They absolutely love doing it.
Okay.
I'd like to make that clear, because it's not something I'm very conscious of, and we always stop once we feel that they're getting a little bit tired or bored. So it's a production. There's generally, in each shoot, there's between 5 and 9 people involved with things. Generally, they have people on horseback that will gallop next to the horses just to keep them there. Of course, you don't see those in the photographs, because they're very well trained at it now, so they know to stay out the way a little bit. And that's how it works. It is a production. It's people. When people come on workshops, they're quite astonished really how many people are involved in actually putting it all together. It's really exciting. It really feels like you're on a film set, but at the same time you have this sort of touch with reality and also nature. And that's one of the things that I often say, is that often these trips will attract wildlife photographers, of course, horses being, and photographers that have been to Africa many times. They've been shooting elephants and lion and all those sort of things. You have a real disconnect with what you're shooting. You don't, for obvious reasons, you you're using long lenses and you're staying away from the thing you're shooting because potentially it could rip your head off or do something very unpleasant to you. Whereas the horses, you can actually give them a cuddle afterwards, and they'll come up to you. You're working with them for a bit, and then they'll just come over. They're quite inquisitive and very lovely. And then you just give them a bit of a cuddle and have a chat, and then off they go. And I just end up sitting with them sometimes and just letting them all come around. And it's such a peaceful, beautiful thing to do. And it's really good for the soul. You feel really special afterwards, and you really feel like you've had a connection with these wonderful things.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I was wondering about the ranchers or cowboys who help you, and obviously for the photography that you're doing, they stay out of the way. But I wondered if that's potentially photographic material there. I don't know. Are these cool cowboy type guys or
guys and girls?
These guys like?
Yeah, they are generally, yes. I mean, sometimes they'll come in the traditional garb outfits, which they're called the Guardians. The English word would be guardian. It's spelled almost identically the same way in French. And originally, in the Camargue also, they breed black bulls, like you would see in Spain. And the Camargue became a sort of a place where a lot of the Spanish bulls were grown, raised, and then sent back to Spain. Sadly, a lot of times it's for bullfights and things, which is not so good. But historically, the Guardians used the white horses of the Camargue as a sort of 4x4 to herd the bulls. So they're very brave animals for a start. And yes, there was a traditional outfit that they would wear, the hats and shirts and these sort of staves with this little three-pointed trident, and that became quite it's quite a look. And so when there's a sort of a particular festival or something, you often see the Guardians putting on their traditional clothing. And yes, if they're wearing those, they're also good. It's always good to include them in the shot or to have them in the shot. When it's sort of a hooded anorak and it's not quite so glamorous, but these outfits are really cool. So yeah, it's always nice to do that. But I'm not so much a people photographer. I tend to stick to the animals. It's kind of just the way I prefer.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the Frisian horses then, which is literally in contrast to the Camargue horses. So you have these black horses in your fine art sort of contrasty black and white style. It's really spectacular pictures. There's something about the black horses on the white. It's so strong.
Thank you.
Is that a similar approach, or is there a different kind of setup for those guys? Yeah,
it's entirely different. Obviously, the idea is that it all, as I said, there's a sort of fluency that it all runs in. But no, those horses, I mean, they are spectacular. They are incredible horses, and they're enormous. I mean, I'm quite tall. I'm about 6'2", and I look up at them. The stallions are absolutely enormous, right. And they're the ones that we use for the shoots are generally the real thoroughbred top stallions, breeding stallions, and so we have to have special permission, and they don't bring them out of the stables. They have to stay within a certain area, and that's how I get those images either by sitting on the floor and then shooting the horse against the sky, or sometimes we put up a white backdrop and it's all outside, and shoot the horse against. I had this sort of idea in my head. There was some portraiture by Rich Davedon, the famous American portrait and fashion photographer that I'd seen years ago, and it was a huge influence on me, where he shot people against a white background in black and white, and he sometimes put them on one side with a bit of space on the left-hand side. They were all black and white, and these really stuck in my head, and I thought, well, maybe I can do that sort of thing with horses and actually treat them like portraits, have these sort of profiles but with movement, and that's really what the goal was, and it sort of became a thing. It became quite a big. Those prints, it really surprised me. I mean, the horses are magnificent, but the prints as well. We print them very big, and they're quite a statement in a house or in a hotel or whatever. So they've sold very well for us, but for me. But it started off with that whole portrait thing, as you were saying earlier on about the strength of portraiture and how many ways you can actually shoot a portrait. And this was just really a pinched idea, or adapted idea from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask about you're selling your prints, because I was thinking printing those must be really tricky to maintain, and you do a really good job on the screen anyway. You have all the contrast that you want, but you're not losing any detail, and it doesn't look flat. It still looks strong and chunky.
Thank you.
Do you print yourself, or do you get someone to do that?
Well, it varies according to the size of the print. As I said, most of those particular prints, I mean, I process myself, so I prepare for print, but I don't print the big prints myself. I'm a bit clumsy when it comes to technology, and when it's just a smaller print, if you mess it up, it's not the end of the world. But when it's a big print, if you mess it up too many times, then it starts to owe you money, and then it's not such a good idea. So I have people who are expert at that doing that. But the processing, I have a slightly different way of doing things. Because I come from a darkroom background, and now I work in digital. But I did feel I didn't want to let go of that. That thing that the darkroom has, in that there'll be a slight individuality between each print. So if you were to hold 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 prints from the same edition and put them next to each other on a wall, there'd be slight changes in each one. I've always liked that sort of way of thinking. So now how I do it is I reprocess every photograph every time there's a print order. So I go back to the raw file and I reprocess it, get it all ready, and then it goes out again. So when someone orders a print, it really is a one-off, because it will be slightly different to the other editions. And of course it takes a bit of time, but fortunately for me, my processing is not very heavy. I don't do an awful lot. It takes 5, 6, 10 minutes, something like that, because I'm very conscious of A, getting it right in camera, and B, I'm not doing too much of it, so I still want it to look kind of natural, so there's not too much stuff going on. But I'm very conscious of shadows and highlights and things like that. So as part of my black and white training myself, I wanted to achieve a lot of contrast, but without having any pure black or pure white or anything like that. It's all very controlled, and it's all about shape. I think my composition also, I've realised over the years, it's about shape, something that attracts you from a long way away. As you get close, you see more detail. As you get closer still, you see more detail. And I suppose that's what I've been trying to do.
And so with those prints, you were saying they print you quite large for the ones that you sell.
Yeah.
What kind of size are you looking at?
Round about I'll talk in meters if you don't mind, because I've lost a bit of the inches thing, but it's about 1 meter 25 square, something like that. I think it's about 5 foot or so, isn't it? Something like that. So yeah, they're quite big. It's on. I use Hannah Mueller photo rag, which is, I'm sure you know, you're nodding. For me, it's always been the one that holds the ink as well. For those where there's a lot of darker ink, where there's a lot of dark stuff, it holds that really well and has a texture to it, which is really lovely. So I've used it really right from the start, and don't really see myself changing unless something really truly amazing comes along.
Okay, I have my script on the side, which is prepared, but I'm going to go crazy and go in a different direction. I wanted to ask you about your influences, because it's kind of come up with Avedon, and it might lead me into my next question. So going back to when you were coming up and learning photography in the darkroom, who would be your photography influences or heroes at that time?
There were a few things that I enjoyed, but funnily enough, I didn't follow any of the particular routes. A bit like Avedon, I didn't become a portrait photographer, although from the 80s or 90s I really loved his work. I thought this is just fantastic. And likewise, there was a fashion photographer called Bruce Weber who was also had only shot in black and white and had a real, obviously working with people clearly, the way he put people was just really interesting. I found very unique, and so those interested me. Although I knew that I didn't really want to become a fashion or a portrait photographer. I had a bit of a bash at fashion photography, doing a few portraits and headshots for models out in the open on the beach, and I quite enjoyed that, but it was not really where I wanted to go. It was more of just earning money, to be honest. This was early on when I was about 20, 21. But also I discovered people like Maurice Rosenfeld, who was a photographer back in New York in the sort of 1920s, really, who shot the sailing boats, all the sailing regattas, with a huge wooden camera in a rowing boat, and just shot these beautiful pictures. You can still see their work online. And then his son sort of took over the business after that, and they were a huge influence on me, and made me realise, that sort of freezing of a moment of something that's so big, it can look very spectacular. And I almost saw it And in fact, it's something that's been used about me, and you mentioned it earlier on. It's almost like you're taking pictures of the wind, and I, at least obviously the results of it, whether it's a sailing boat or a mane of a horse, I always kind of feel that I'm looking at the reactions or the results of the wind. And Maurice Rosenfeld certainly brought that home. He had a great eye for structure, and really beautiful work. So that was a huge influence. And then who else? I mean, there's been so many, to be honest. Not the obvious ones. A lot of people think, oh well, because you're square and black and white, it must be this person. It wasn't really. It became a different route. I was much more influenced by people outside the area that I was interested in working with. Those are the ones that spring to mind right now, but there's been many others.
Yeah, it's interesting how influences can influence in different ways. I mean, like you're saying, it doesn't have to mean that you're going to copy that, but something from that can apply to add it to your style or your palette, I guess. I wanted to quickly ask you about the Arctic, because there was something written on your website. I was really interested in this line on your website, and I wanted to follow it up, because hopefully there's some learning in here for me. It was a location that you'd visited many times, but you'd struggled with, or in your words, failed miserably. And then something clicked that allowed you to create images that you were happy with. So there's a whole gallery on your website with these Arctic images. I was really intrigued about this process, or the moment, or the revelation, or the shift in your mindset, and I was really interested to dig into what happened there, because you said you had one good day there, but it was 10 years in the making. Can you talk about that? Yes,
I've always felt that when you get things wrong, it's almost as useful as getting things right. I think I've always been that sort of mindset, that it's just because I mess up, it can be a good thing, because it sort of channels you in a different direction or makes you think of something else. So that's always been a mindset of mine. I've never been one that moans about the weather, or has to. I just sort of get on with it and see what happens. There's no plan generally, but of course, when you spend money and go somewhere as far as Greenland, you do expect that you're going to get something. And sure, you're right. That the first, I went. I think first in 2011 I went, and I thought I'm going to take some pictures of icebergs, and just couldn't. I mean, I took pictures, but no, I just couldn't get. I think I wanted to sort of go high key, and it wasn't working because it was too bright, and I just, it really can. And the color blues are so beautiful, and as a black and white photographer, that became difficult, because so I just came away with a sense of, I've got a lot of pictures. This was on my first trip, but I didn't really take anything, so I just left it. I thought maybe I'll like them. I do this a lot as well. Maybe I don't like them now, but maybe I will, in a few months or in a year or something. So I went back a couple of years later. I went to the same place, and exactly the same. It's like I'd learned nothing. Exactly the same thing happened. I couldn't see how I was going to make. I was taking pictures, and they were okay, but they just weren't looking good. They weren't looking how I wanted them to good, and how I wanted them to look, and I couldn't work out why. I went once more, and it was still the same. And I just thought, I'm just going to leave it now, because I'm obviously not, stick to what you're good at. Don't push yourself that much. So I left it, and then I went back purely because I thought, no, I want to nail this. I want to get this right, or at least for my own benefit, just to. So I went back in 2019, which was shooting on my own first of all, and then for a workshop, and. I started shooting, and it is a very beautiful place. And I started obviously having this melancholy about the icebergs, and whether my children's children would be able to see them, as for reasons that we won't go into now, but which are fairly obvious. And one sort of particular day on the boat, I was struck with this sort of melancholy, this sort of quite sad feeling, and I took a lot of pictures that day, and then got back, I think it was the last day of shooting, if I remember rightly, and then got back to, I didn't do anything with them there, I didn't even look at them, but got back home and then left it for 2 or 3 weeks. I often do that. I'll leave things quite a while before I look at them, just because it changes your perception, I think, of what you're looking at. And then thought, okay, well, this time maybe I've got something. Started looking at them, and then just still felt I was trying to do something not right with them. And then COVID happened, which was right after that. And it gave me more time, and I sat and looked at these pictures, and I thought, hang on a minute. What I was trying to do was I was trying to go too high key, trying to too sort of abstract with them, and it just wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't working. So I thought, I'm going to go the other way, and it didn't take much in terms of the processing. It was just the way I did the contrast, really. And it started to me thinking of the old cinema photography, where they used to take these wonderful portraits of those wonderful actors, the Clark Gables and the Cary Grants and all those wonderful, and the sort of drama or the way they used to light them, and then also obviously work like Ansel Adams and the wonderful work he did with the kind of California national parks and others, and it took me back to that, and I decided to, although I never expected to get anywhere close to what he did, I'm not at all in that league. It just inspired me to do something a bit more different, more classic sort of landscape, but with icebergs, if you like. And then I realised that there were actually some decent skies for that one day. And that one day that I'd spent a lot of time shooting, the weather was a little bit cloudy, a little bit mistier. And I think that had probably aided my melancholy, or sort of pushed it a little bit, because it just felt a bit sort of flat. And flat to a black and white photography is heaven. And I'd sort of forgotten, I'd got so involved. So I just took loads of pictures. And then it came to me afterwards how I should treat them. And that's why when I started working on them, I started getting sort of goosebumps, not because I think they're brilliant, but but because I think they were what I was after without even realizing it. The collection is called Song for the Arctic, and I think there's about 15, 18 pictures, something like that, all from that one day. And and I think, what a day! I don't think I've ever taken that many, in my eyes, successful pictures in one day. So it was a fascinating thing, but a real lesson, as I said, a real lesson in patience and if it's meant to happen, it will eventually, maybe.
Let me ask you about your workshops quickly, because you've got Ocean Capture and Capture Earth are your companies, and I knew of Ocean Capture. I didn't know about Capture Earth, and following that up, that looks really, really cool. But really high quality workshops with yourself, and also pulling in other great photographers like Paul Sanders, who I've had on the podcast. Yes. Rachel Talibart, is it?
Yes.
I'm not sure how to say her last name.
Yeah, you said it right. Yeah.
And Ragnar Axelsson.
Yes.
What are the ingredients for you that make a great photography workshop?
Well, it's always been about experience, almost more than anything else, I think. And so I've always wanted to, the choice of hotels, the choice of, obviously, let's forget locations and photographic side of things, taking that for granted, because of course it's a photographic workshop, so that's gonna happen, right? I'm not, but it's the other stuff. I always wanted to think about the other stuff, the other side of it, and I felt that wasn't really being addressed with a lot of workshops, and also I was running everything as if I was going on one, how I'd like it to be, and so it would always be with a photographer who I felt had earned their place, had really, not as a group lead, not as a tour leader, but as a photographer, had really found their place in whichever field they were representing. Someone who was a go-to person for. So that's why the Rachels, that's why the Michael Levins, that's why the Ragnar Axelsson, all those people you mentioned, Paul, of course, Paul Sanders. All these people are, they found their niche, they found their thing, and they do it successfully. They sell prints. And then the tour thing, the workshop thing is sort of an addition to that. You're going there to learn or to listen to that person, to be guided around by that person, but in a very nice environment. So the hotels are either very, very high quality with good restaurants, or they're very quirky in a good way. Sometimes in these places we go to, there's not always a 5-star hotel, but there'll be somewhere very good or very cool or very different. So it's always things we look for. So the research that goes into the trips is significant. And during a trip, of course, we try and bring out each person's creativity rather than inflict our own, which is something very important. We often don't take photographs ourselves while we're on trips. Rachel doesn't at all. Paul hardly. It's very much. We're there for the group and trying to make it work. There's processing and ideas and sitting around a table, but very much it's, as I said, bringing out the creativity of each person rather than just getting them to take your picture, which is a bit of a lazy route. So those are the things really that makes Ocean Capture stand out. We also run these Masters event, of which Capture Earth is one actually, but just under a different label. So Capture Earth it started with that actually. It's a wildlife event held in Africa once a year. And we go to a rather nice luxury lodge somewhere in Africa, and we invite 4 of the best wildlife photographers in the world, whoever they may be, and it changes each year. And then we invite 12 clients to share their knowledge. It's almost like a retreat. So the group of 12 gets broken up into small groups of 3, and then each day you spend a full day with one of the top, legendary photographers. And it's again an amazing experience. There's talks and seminars and critiques, and it's a real immersion thing in that. And we often have talks from other people too, like the Born Free Foundation came the last one we did and gave talks and went out for trips with us in the vehicles, which was truly amazing. So this is me not as a photographer, by the way. I'm very much in an organisational role in this. I'm sort of generally walking around with a glass of wine and just making sure everyone's okay. That's my role in that, which is lovely. Virginia McKenna came to that trip. So she was the actress from the 1960s that starred in the original movie of Born Free, and was a sort of, it's an amazing movie, and to have her sitting on a Land Rover with us, actually my kids came to that trip, was truly an extraordinary thing to do, and her talking about the filming of of this great movie. So it's very much again about creating something that you just can't get anywhere else. This adventure, this experience. And so I took that formula and then took it back to ocean capture and started the Masters of Photography, which is where people like Michael Kenner, Ragnar Axelsson, Hans Strand, these other wonderful names, John Sexton. It's exactly the same format. So we go to a different location around the world somewhere, have 4 amazing photographers and a small group of 12 who then do the same thing. So, learn from those and immerse themselves. And it really is a fantastic... we do other tours, of course, or workshops with ocean capture. We just do one of those every couple of years. And then apart from that, people like Rachel, Paul, myself, we all run our own little workshops and tours in different places, all normally with water as being the sort of the main theme, hence the ocean capture. But of course, with me, I add the horses, so I do the Camargue, Frisians, etc. as well. But that's really it. It's just trying to keep it, as you said earlier on, about the brand, keeping it really tight, sticking to what we love, what we know the best. That way you don't make too many mistakes. You constantly learning, but if you keep it to what you love, then the chances are you're going to get it fairly right. And that's how we go. And very, very happy with the way it's grown from just me, as I said earlier, running a few workshops with 3 or 4 people now to I think we do something like 32 trips a year and some great names involved in it. And I'm really delighted with the way it's gone.
It looks great. I've run some workshops before, and I agree. Making the experience, the bits in between, is what makes it. I think, because as you said, the photography should be good. That should obviously you'll be going to a good place. But the one that really caught my eye, you do a workshop for 5 days, I think it is, photographing waves. I can only imagine how relaxed I would be after 5 days photographing waves. I think I would completely pass out. I don't know, I've never been that relaxed. I can imagine. I might book on. But the Capture Earth one as well, it just looks amazing. It's so amazing. If you're still good for time, can we talk about gear? Let's do the gear round.
Sure.
What is your go-to camera lens combination?
Well, it depends on what I'm doing is the answer to that, because I do, as you said, there's versatility is something that I like to keep nourished. So it does very much depend. If I'm with a tripod doing something in the mist, then it's probably some sort of Zeiss, I should think. I've got from I think 18 through till 50. So it might be that manual focus one. So it could be that, or it could be often 24 to 70 f2.8. I'm a Nikon user. I use the D850s. Have done for years. I've got 3 of them. Not because I'm greedy, but because I need 3 of them for sometimes if I'm doing the sailing boats or whatever. You need that many because you're constantly cleaning them. I have crossed over to medium format a couple of times, but just didn't like. I liked it, but I felt that the cameras were a little bit too fragile for what I was doing. They get, with the horses is mud, with the sailing boats there's water. If it's not that, I like damp conditions. I like drizzle and, as we said, mist and all those things. So I found the D850 is pretty indestructible. It they go through a lot of nonsense, and I don't really look after them too well. And I've still got the same 3 that I had, when I first bought them, which is probably 3 years ago now. So they've been through a lot of things, 4 years maybe. Lenses, the ones I use for horses and for the sailing boats, 24 to 70 to 70 to 200 is, of course, the f2.8, which is a fantastic lens. And then sometimes a bit longer, I've got a 200 to 400 f4, which is a badly heavy thing, but it's difficult in the boat, but sometimes for horses. But mostly, I've got a rather cheap 100 to 400 80 to 400 f5.6 to something or other. Although it's not on paper a very good lens, I really like what it does. It feels, especially with the horses, it feels quite nice. I like the sort of effect that it gives. It's not too perfect, and I quite like that, I think. So yeah, I use that a bit. It's actually over here now. It's very beaten up and got mud and scratches and all sorts of stuff all over it, but it's quite a good one just to stick in the camera bag. So that's really about it, I think.
You process your work yourself? Are you using Lightroom or a different?
Yeah, I start off in Lightroom, so I sort of download everything into Lightroom first of all, and then I spend a bit of time there sorting through things. As I said, I normally leave it maybe 3-4 weeks before after any shoot, to actually have a proper look, and then I sort of have a quick look, make a few decisions about which ones I like, and then we'll whisk things through I'll do a little bit there. I'll go into black and white there, and then it'll, a little bit of contrast and curves and things, and I take it into Photoshop just to finish it off. Not for any other reason, it's just that I've been using Photoshop. I used it when I was even doing the marketing back in those days, so it's a piece of software I just felt at home with. So when I'm working on something, when it goes to Photoshop for the last sort of 30 seconds or minute of its sort of processing, it's where I like to finish things off. I feel sort of comfortable there, so I can look at it and say, yeah, now you're finished. So that's what I use. Yeah.
I don't know, all or most or a lot of your photographs are square. On
all
your
of
website,
them, I think all of them. If not,
okay.
Yeah, 90, certainly 99% anyway. Yeah.
So yeah, I knew that you used the 850, but I was wondering. I know you said you dabbled in medium format, but from my experience, shooting a square is a different thing than cropping it square from a rectangle. Do you find it? You must be used to it, but do you find a challenge with the square cropping later? Or would there be any advantage to you to be able to shoot it square?
I do shoot it square now. The 850 you can shoot in square, which is brilliant. So
you can?
Yeah, which is great. Previously, I think the closest I could get to was a sort of 5x4.
Okay.
And so I used to shoot that and then just crop it. I got very used to just shooting a little bit wider than I wanted to, or making sure the stuff I wanted was in the right place. And again, just taught myself that by sort of cropping pictures I already had and just seeing what just spending a bit of time working on that. I do like composition is incredibly important to me, and I mean it's singularly the most important thing. So I'm very finicky. There's a good word about that, and. It has to be right. So I'll sometimes make little adjustments in Lightroom, but generally, in the old days I used to crop it back into a square from a 5x4, but nowadays it's square anyway. Yeah. Sometimes sorry, go on.
Well, sorry, I was just going to ask if the viewfinder closes down to a square then.
Yeah, I'm basically seeing a square like you'd see a rectangle. So I'm looking through. Okay. I think some of the Canons, they just put black lines down either side. But in the Nikon, you see basically all I'm looking at is a square of what's going on. So yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, cool.
I love it.
It's cool.
Did that sensibility? Did that come from shooting a square at any point? Were you were you shooting like a medium format film camera before?
Yeah, I was. I dabbled with Hasselblad early on. I've still got it. Actually, I've got a 500 cm. Which of course shoots square, and I loved that. There was something about the square, and I know that it's become a big thing now with Instagram and other things, that the square has become very fashionable. But this is, with me, it's not a fad. Obviously, clearly, I've been doing it a long time. It's just something I just love, and I've tried to try other things. I've tried to sort of push myself and say, well, don't be so boring. Do other things apart from a square. And when I do, it just doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel right. So I go back to it. There's just something about the shape I like. I don't know. It's just a balance. I think it really, because it's so unlike what you look at. It adds to the sort of slightly surreal. The fact that it's in black and white, the fact that it's in a square. it adds to that surreal sort of quality that I'm trying to produce with my pictures. Anyway, it just is. And I just like it. I feel comfortable there. I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I love shooting a square. Haven't done it for many years, but now that I know that 850 can do it, I might go and get one. But anyway, cool. As if I've got loads of money lying around. Thanks for that. This takes us to a round called double exposure, okay? I'm going to ask you the story behind one of your pictures that I really like, and then I'll ask you to tell me the story behind one of your pictures that you really like. Yeah, the one I'm going to go for is Feather, Iceland. It's so maybe people who are listening to this in the car, they may not be able to see the picture, so maybe you could describe the picture and tell us if there's a story behind it.
Yeah, it's a picture of a feather in Iceland, basically. It's no, I'm joking. No, so it's basically a volcanic beach. There's a sort of section. It's quite an abstract shot. It's sort of a close-in shot, and there's a bit of beach, and in the top corner there's a bit of white sort of foam from the sea just kind of coming in, and then somewhere in there's this just white feather that's lying on the black sand. So it's obviously a black and white. Most of the picture is black, dark sand with some little highlights in the sand, which I really like. And then you've got this foam and the feather. And it's another one of those. I told you earlier on, I don't get sort of moody about weather or things, and glass is always half full. And this was exactly one of those situations where I went to this particular beach in Iceland to go and shoot something. And I can't remember what it was. It was probably some rocks or something pointing out towards the sea, and the weather was terrible. The wind was howling in, bringing with it rain, and so it was that sort of horizontal rain that you just can't do anything with. So I thought, fair enough. I'll go back to the car, and then just as I was walking back with my head down, I just noticed the feather that was just on the beach, and I thought, that's nice. The white feather against the black beach. I said, it just needs something else in that, and there's a picture there. And then as soon as I thought that, the tide just came in a little bit, and I just sort of saw it in my peripheral vision, and just sort of almost wrapped itself around the feather. So I thought, there you go. And I was facing a different way to the wind was blowing and the rain was coming. So I think I spent 3 minutes shooting that. I think I took maybe 3 or 4 pictures of it in the end, on no filter, but it was probably a few seconds exposure because it was so dull and horrible, and I was pointing downwards, so there was no light coming in. And as soon as I'd taken it, I thought, I really like this. There's something about this picture. It's different, and I like what it represents. That it's not, you don't always get what you want, but there's always something. There's always something there. So I thought, I don't know whether anyone else will like it. But I really liked it, so that's the important thing for me. So up it went, and literally within, I think I'd process it about a month or two after I got back, and straight away it became a book cover. It became this, became that, and I thought, wow, other people do like it. That's interesting. And funnily enough, it often gets picked up on as being, to chat about, which is lovely. I'm very proud of it. It's a nice picture.
Obviously we've spoken about the horses and stuff, so I wanted to go for something that was a little different, but again, your style is on that. So just to throw it back to you, is there one favourite picture or something that's just got a great anecdote that goes with it that you could share?
Blimey, you've thrown that at me, haven't you? I need to have a quick look at my website to remind myself. There's always stuff. I mean, every photograph represents. This sounds like a stalling technique. Well, I'm actually looking at my own pictures because it is. Every picture really represents a story, and I said earlier on that I don't sort of take pictures of people very much. Well, I don't really, but I mean hardly. But generally every trip that I do, there are people involved at some level, and and over the years I've met some really wonderful. So often these pictures actually have anecdotes about people. But I did some stuff I've been to Zanzibar 2 or 3 times, and I really love working in East Africa. I love the people. I've been to Mozambique. I've been to Zanzibar. These places that I love the way that they live with the sea, adapt with the sea, eat from the sea, and the people are generally. Mozambique's going through a bit of a hard time at the moment. I'm really sorry for them, but generally, it's a very enlightening and lovely experience. And every time I go to those areas, I'm always have these wonderful experiences with the people. And I work with these fishing dhows, so these fishing boats or trading boats, where originally they used to sail them from East Africa over to India or to Arabia, as it was called then, for trading. And the smaller versions were used for fishing, and they have these beautiful sails which are really unusual. And I have there's a few pictures on my website in a portfolio that's called To Catch a Thief. Sorry, it's not called that at all. That's a film. It's called To Catch a Fish. And there's a few pictures from there where I'm either in the water up to my waist shooting some people sailing, or I'm on the boat itself shooting and those trips are just filled with laughter and good fun, and people are singing, and the water's warm, and and I'm not at all thinking about my insurance policy because my camera's about 3 centimeters above the surface of the sea. It's just a really fun thing, and I think there's a few pictures in there which I look back on, and it just makes me smile because I just remember the smells and the sounds and everything else. When someone else looks at one of those pictures, hopefully it means something else to them, which is brilliant. But for me, that's what I remember. And there's 2 or 3 pictures of just hands holding ropes also. And again, I don't take pictures of people much, but I really love those pictures. I think they mean something to me because the people did. They were generally lovely people, and I enjoy those moments. So probably, if I had to pick anything, although they all have their own story, that little group, I'm thinking about it a lot at the moment because I'm thinking about going back out there at the end of this year. So that's probably why it's on my mind today, because I've just been looking into it. But yeah, I think those pictures I'm really happy with. The horse pictures, of course, always, especially the Camargue, it has a real, and the Icelandic horses, they have a real special place in my heart too, for the people, but of course mostly for the animals, which are just amazing, really amazing.
Great. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. People can check those out, and it is just a fantastic gallery.
Thank you.
And there's some pictures there from different places as well, so it's well worth checking out. So,
thank you.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. This is the last round. If you've got 2 minutes, or as
Sure,
fast
Graham.
as we can go
Ahead,
because it's
fine.
the quick fire motor drive round. Okay.
Wow.
So let's go. Wide angle or telephoto?
Oh, see, that's horrible. Quick fire. At the moment, telephoto. So I'll go that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Oh God. Right. If I'm in England or at home, it's tea. If I'm anywhere else in the world, it's coffee.
Fair enough. Stay up late or wake up early?
Wake up early.
Okay. This one, I don't know which way you're going to go on this, but this is the ultimate question for the whole podcast. Expensive lens cloth or the corner of your shirt?
Corner of my shirt.
Okay. I really thought you might be a lens cloth guy. It's good.
No, I have one. I have several, but it's the corner of the shirt is just better because it's the one you've got right next to you. Right?
It's there. It's the best cloth available. So, what's your go-to emoji?
Probably the one that looks like someone saying thank you. The hands pressed together. That's probably the one that I use the most. I think. Yeah, okay. I'm not very good at emojis or anything like that, but that's probably the one I'd use the most.
Good. I like it. It goes with your glass half full gratitude vibe that you have. I love it. Okay, you live in the south of France. I don't know if you're an expert on French music, but which is the best French band or musician that we should check out?
I have absolutely no idea because I don't really follow French music too much. But having said that, I'm actually going to the Camargue for a workshop in about next week actually, and not a lot of people know that there's a very famous band called the Gypsy Kings, who were a sort of this gypsy band who sing in a sort of Spanish. They're very sort of flamenco-y sounding. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they became a sort of an international success with some of their songs. Yeah. And they are from the Camargue. They're actually French, and they're from the Camargue. Really? And I've actually met a couple of them, and even had a couple of them singing at an event that I did there, which was an amazing experience. So when we go to the Camargue, I generally have got something to do with that sort of music, this kind of gypsy music, which is very much part of the area. So if nothing else, then check out a bit of French flamenco from the Camargue, and then you'll, on a summery day, when the sun's sort of shining and you're out, it's a nice thing to listen to. It puts you in a good mood.
Great answer. What's a weird thing I could find in your camera bag?
A weird thing you can find in my camera bag would be, I'm really anything really, because I tend to pack things sort of panicking because I always leave it to the last minute. So I've gone off with all sorts of things that shouldn't be there. I've gone off with the remote control to the television. I've gone off with all sorts of strange things. So who knows? It's really a bit of a sort of potluck what you're going to find in there each time I go away. But there's always generally something in there that shouldn't be there. My wife's hairbrush was one, and as you know, I tend not to use those. I don't know, all sorts of strange things. This is the most embarrassing thing. When my daughter was about 6, a pair of her pants went in there, and I thought it was my lens cloth because it was the same colour, and pulled out this lens cloth for once, and it was actually a pair of my 6-year-old daughter's pants, which was a little bit embarrassing. So there's always something strange that shouldn't be in there, but God knows what it is this time.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old. I can understand how that could happen.
Okay.
Totally.
Good. Thank you for your understanding.
So we've spoken about photographers, so I'll skip that question. Last question: when do you feel at peace with the universe?
That's a really good question, Graham. Well, they all have been. I think when I know my family's okay. When I feel that everyone's happy here, that's probably that box has to be ticked. If I'm out on a boat pottering around out on the coast here, with the sun shining and like my kids are with me or my wife's with me, or we're just sort of pottering around and jumping off the boat into the water and swimming and stuff. Those are the moments where I feel probably the most comfortable and the most at peace, because I'm in or on the water. My kids are there. It's just and everything is good. Even if it isn't, just for those hours, everything's fantastic. So last time we did it, my son just looked at me and said, I don't think I've ever been so happy. And we were just sort of exploring some caves or something from the boat, and it's just to hear that from a 16-year-old is pretty special. So those moments probably are the most exhilarating in terms of feeling very at peace with everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great answer. Great guest. Thank you, Jonathan. I learned so much in this interview.
Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, I really appreciate your photography. I respect how you've gone about it, and so thanks for your time. Have a great day.
You as well. Thanks for everything, Graham. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Follow Jonathan on Instagram. Links to everything we spoke about are in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, then check out my conversations with Howard Schatz and Paul Sanders. That's all for now. Take care, enjoy your photography, and I'll see you out there.